Unteachables, Chapter 10, Rihanna Rabuni. Bad news from Utah. The equipment trailer got struck by lightning, so production on my mom's movie has to be shut down for a couple of weeks. Can't I come back home while you guys are waiting to start up again? I asked Mom over Skype. That wouldn't work, she tells me. What about school? How can we pull you out of Greenridge when you just got started, and then re-enroll you once shooting resumes here? That would be too disruptive. I have to hold myself back from screaming. There's nothing to disrupt. I don't really go here. Geez Louise never registered me. I'm not even in a real class. Forget it. Mom would just be on the phone to Dad and seconds flat. Never a pleasant convo. I'd be back in that office fast enough to make my head spin, registering for 8 classes instead of just 1. 8 new teachers to get used to, who'll give real assignments and real homework. No, my life here isn't perfect, but it's designed for maximum bearableness. Why get complicated? I'm a short timer, just not quite as short as I thought. 2 extra weeks in Greenridge of Dad and Stepmonster. Of course, Chauncey's sniffling and fevers and rashes and barfs. 2 more weeks in the Parmesan house. 2 more weeks of the Unteachables. Fine, I can handle it. I can do 2 more weeks standing on my head. Speaking of school, Mom goes on, how are you fitting in? I went there, back when it was the old Greenridge High. Great, I tell her, I've already got picked for a special program. Mom beams. Special? I knew she would be able to resist the idea of me being exceptional. I plow forward. It's called SCS 8. Really hard to get into. I should know. I'm not even really in it. The teachers are fantastic. He's super hands off because he wants us to learn to work independently. Mr. Kermit believes. Kermit? She interrupts. You mean from the cheating scandal? Cheating scandal? Mom brow furrows. It was an awfully long time ago, in the early 90s. I remember I was away at college when it happened, but it must be the same person. Kermit isn't a very common name. I'm intrigued. What did Mr. Kermit do? I don't remember the details, but the whole town was up in arms about it. I'm surprised he's still teaching. It was a horrible black mark against him. Wow, Mr. Kermit has a past. The plot thickens. Mom adds, do you want me to call the school and get to the bottom of it? No, I blurt out. I mean, Mr. Kermit's an awesome teacher now, and that's the main thing, right? Who cares what happened in the 90s? But Kiana, it was a cheating scandal. I don't want you mixed up with something like that. Relax, Mom, I assure her. I guarantee that there isn't any cheating going on at SCS 8. I can say that with total confidence because there isn't anything going on, period. Why would you bother to cheat when Mr. Kermit never even looks at the few papers he gets? Eventually, she agrees to let the subject drop, and I end the Skype call. My mind is racing. Suddenly, I've cracked a mystery that's been nagging for me from the very first moment. I followed Parker's schedule to room 117. Why would Mr. Kermit want to teach a class like the Unteachables? Answer, he doesn't. He gets a bad class every year because of what happened back in the 90s. Seems very crazy that he's still paying for the mistake that he did so long ago. But if Mom remembers, other people do too. Turns out SCS 8 isn't just a dumping ground for all the rejects in school. The reject teachers wind up there too. So Mr. Kermit is famous. If Mama remembers what he did back when, that counts as fame. Okay, it was a real bad thing, but so what? On reality TV shows, the biggest stars are always the jerks. Besides beside a cheating scandal or not, I can't forget he spoke up for our class to Mrs. Vargas and how he brought the Barnstorms right to stay with the football team. He may not be much of a teacher, but I'm more convinced than ever that he's one of the good guys. I'm almost anxious to get to school the next day, and it isn't just because Chauncey is barking the house down with whooping cough. When I get to the room 117 through, Mr. Kermit is absent. He has a substitute, Mr. Landsman. Mr. Kermit's not exactly a young guy, but Mr. Landsman's really old. Hyman does a quick sketch of her raising from the grave as part of the zombie apocalypse. The kid is really talented. The picture makes the rounds of the class by paper plane. Dawn of the Dead, hisses Mato when the portrait lands back on his desk. No talking, Mr. Landsman's orders. Too late. A nickname is born. He's Dawn of the Dead, Dawn for short. She's grouchy, but we should be used to that by now. Our regular teacher being a gold medalist at Grouchy Olympics. It feels different though. Dawn crabs at us, while Kermit just crabs because crabbing is his natural state. So when some of it lands on us, we probably don't take it personally. We just happen to be in the same room. Dawn is yammering on about the Battle of Gettysburg when I hear a power hum, low but growing in volume. At first, I'm afraid the school is about to blow up. Then I realize the sound is coming from the desk next to me, Aldo. His face is almost red as his hair as he devotes all his breath to maintaining the sound. Now the hum is coming from behind me at the slightest different pitch. I risk a glance over my shoulder. Barnstorm's doing it too. I look of unholy glee on his face. Next, the noise drops to at least an octave. Elaine is buzzing like a bassoon. Well, we all Californians know how to prank a sub as well as anybody, so I jump right in. Pretty soon, SCS-8 is vibrating. Alarmed, Dawn of the Dead puts in a call to the custodian. As soon as Mr. Carsters comes in, we stop humming. What is happening? Just a second ago, the substitute teachers insist. It sounded like a problem with the wiring. The custodian rakes us with a rueful look. It's the kids, ma'am. They're messing with you. They do it to all the subs. Dawn doesn't like that. For a minute there, I'm afraid we're going to have a real zombie apocalypse on our hands. But in the end, what can she do besides yell? She does a whole lot of that. It's pretty jarring when you're used to Mr. Kermit, who barely speaks at all. We fight back. We do the old drop a textbook trick at least 20 times. Barnstorms drums with his crutches on the floor. Elaine pretends to be asleep, which is odd because Hyman is awake and alert. Mato speaks to the substitute in a Dothraki and does all the written work in 11 runes. That's right, I said work. Dawn of the Dead is trying to run this like an actual class. Who does she think she is? Take out your math books, she announced. What math books? Barnstorm returns. Surely there is a math book. Her frustration is growing. How do you study math? We do worksheets. Mato supplies. What worksheets? I don't see any worksheet. There should be a lesson plan. Of course there should, if we had a normal teacher, but Dawn of the Dead doesn't know Mr. Kermit. Maybe she thinks he's ransacked the classroom before she arrived and threw out all the notes and now how was she supposed to run the day? Whatever the reason, she is getting madder and madder. With no lessons plans to go by, Dawn finds language arts paragraph in some random book. But she chooses Parker to read it aloud, so obviously he takes forever to sound out the first word. And because we've been giving her a hard time all day, she picks now to decide that somebody is yanking her chain when Parker's the only one who isn't. So she sends him to the principal's office. 60 seconds later, we hear a pickup truck with a broken muffler start up and peel out of the parking lot. You know he didn't do that on purpose, I tell Dawn. He has a reading problem and he's sensitive about it. Miss Fountain comes over and tries to calm everybody down by inviting us to another circle time. Circle time? Dawn is outraged. These students are too old for circle time, and so are yours. Miss Fountain seems to be about to launch into her speech on how no one is too old for positive reinforcement. But when she takes a look at Dawn of the Dead, who actually might be, she beats a hasty retreat to her own class. When the bell finally rings at 3:30, Dawn of the Dead tells us that we were the most disrespectful class she had ever met in her long teaching career, and we should be all ashamed of ourselves. My son went to this school. He was a successful journalist today, and he'd be appalled to see what has become of this place that gave him his education. You students are a new low. I don't think you'd ever behave for Mr. Kermit the way you behaved today. As we listened to her sensible heels clicking down the hall, a strange quiet descended in room 117. Yeah, well, maybe Mr. Kermit isn't a cranky old bag like you. Aldo tosses after her when she's too far away for him to hear. The thing is, she's right. Hammond muses, brow furrowed. We wouldn't behave that way for Ribbit. I wonder why. I could have answered that because even though Mr. Kermit kind of ignores us, he knows we're his class and he sticks up for us when we need it. He likes us in his way. And I'd never be able to explain it to others, but I think in our own way, we might be starting to like him too. When Mr. Kermit enters room 117 the next morning, he's greeted by a sight he's never seen before. The seven of us, quite attentive, seated at our desks, hands folded, eyes in front. Let's face it, there's no way Dawn of the Dead said anything good about us yesterday. This, then, is payback time. And none of us were looking forward to it. You can feel the tension in the air as we wait for the teacher to let us have it. Mr. Kermit sets his newspaper and coffee down on his desk and looks from face to face. What? Nobody answers. So he starts handing out the first worksheet of the day. The instant the paper hits our desk, there's a pen in every hand, and all heads are down. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a teacher pull up short, frowning. This is another first. The entire class working hard. No airplane circling around overhead. No talking. He shrugs and returns to his desk, peering down at the crossword puzzle. I turn my attention to the assignment, which is about current events, and I think hard about what I've seen lately in the news, on the internet, and in social media. The intercom buzzes to life. Mr. Kermit, comes a voice of the secretary. Principal Vargas is available this morning if you'd like to discuss Mrs. Landsman's report on your students yesterday. You can almost hear the jarring sound of a needle scratching across the vinyl record. We all froze, staring up at our teacher. If Dawn of the Dead filed a report, you can bet she gave us a Z-. No, Mr. Kermit replies, thanks anyway. That gets our attention. Is Mr. Kermit so detached from reality that he doesn't think anything think anything that happened yesterday was bad? Or is it just that he never read Don's report? Just like he never reads any of our work. The mood in room 117 lightens a little. Whatever the reason is, it looks as if we might be able to be off the hook. It occurs to me that maybe Mr. Kermit never reads our stuff because none of the Unteachables ever hand anything worth reading. That's an easy fix. There's an essay question on the back of today's worksheet, and I make up my mind to knock it out of the park. The prompt is about mass transit, subways, buses, and light rail trains. I believe in that kind of thing anyway. I'm from LA, where our transit system is a joke. And what do we get for it? Traffic jams and pollution. Pretty soon the entire page was full, and I'm only getting started. I approach Mr. Kermit's desk. Ribbit has pushed his puzzle aside. He's examining a memo from the office. I catch it reading, Report of Substitute Teacher, across the top. He notices me and searches his eyes for any reaction to what has to be horrible rundown of her day with the class of the unteachable barbarians. Are you really mad at us? I ask in a small voice. He looks like the question never occurred to him. There's two sides to every story, he says finally. He reaches down and slides the report into the trash. Is there something I can do for you? He adds, obviously wishing I would go away. Can I have more paper? His brows furrow. What for? My essay. I ran out of space. That causes kind of a stir in our classroom, and SCS 8 kids do little work and never too much. Mr. Kermit's back into his puzzle now. It's almost as if he's hoping I'll forget what I asked and just leave him alone. Can I have it? I persist. He looks blank. The paper? Yes, fine. Well, here it is. He gets up from his desk and surveys the room, and it's like he suddenly found himself in some strange and exotic location, a place where he's never seen before. He leads me into the storage closet and opens the door, empty except for cobwebs. He turns to me, completely helpless. Maybe Miss Fountain has extra paper, I suggest. I'm on it. Parker bolts out for the door, so suddenly that he knocks over the desk as he goes flying by, and face plants in the door, springs right back up, and disappears into the hall. The next thing we hear is Miss Fountain's voice from the next room. Parker, you're bleeding. He has a driver's license, Barnstorm sneers. The kid can barely walk. Parker back a few minutes later, holding a wad of pink-stained paper towels to his bloody nose. He hands me a sheaf of lined paper, also pink-stained. I fill 4 pages before I'm done with my essay, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. I know I'm just a short timer, but I can't let my work habits go totally down the drain while I'm here. I'm going to have to be ready to hit the ground running when I'm back to my real school in California. I march up to the front and hand my paper to Mr. Kermit. He looks at me like I've just presented him with a plane of baby scorpions. It's my essay. I reply to the question he probably won't ask. I can't wait to hear what you think. He accepts the paper, places them on the corner of his desk, and goes back to his classwork. Aren't you going to read it? I press. Of course, he assures me without looking up. 3 days later, the page is still set on the corner of the desk, untouched. Parker's blood spots are turning brown.